And we're back for pages 177 to 181, Miss Sadie's Divining Parlor. June 17th, no, is this right? Yes, this is right. June 17th, 1936. Late that afternoon, I returned to Miss Sadie's place in a mood, having crawled through a bramble bush for the prickly poppy. I was feeling a bit prickly myself just then. Why Miss Sadie had to send me all over God's creation to dig up plants never intended for human use, I can't say. Her divining highness was not in sight when I arrived, so I busied myself with trying to find a pot or a vase to put the flowers in. There was nothing on the back porch but a metal watering can and piles of dried up leaves that had been pushed into a corner. The gardening shed looked to be the likely place for a pot, but it was locked. I peeked through the dirty windows, trying to make out what was inside, when, "Get away from there!" Miss Sadie hobbled from the side of the house. "There's nothing in there that you need," she said, breathing heavy from the effort. I held up my flour sack full of plants. "I got most of the ones you asked for. I was just looking for a planting pot." I noticed the wound on her leg. It was worse, all red and festering. "I can lance that for you to let the infection out." Miss Sadie settled herself in her metal rocking chair and her breathing slowed as if a crisis had passed. "Nope." I didn't know what she was waiting for, but it was her leg. "Let me see." Her breathing was still heavy as she motioned toward the plants in my hand. She ran her fingertips all over them, feeling the stems, leaves, petals, smelling them like a blind person wanting to know what she could not see. "Aren't those the ones you wanted?" I asked. "They are, but they do not tell me what I wish to know." She gazed up into the cloudless sky. "The earth, it holds back secrets it is not yet willing to part with." Then, as if she'd seen enough, she started taking the plants apart, expertly sorting leaves from stems, from seeds, creating small piles of each in her lap. "I went all over tarnation to get those, and all you wanted were some dead flowers? They are only dead to what they once were. Now they become something else. Go." Without looking up, she motioned to the dry ground of the garden. "Back to work." I looked at the rows of toiled up soil splayed out like open wounds and did as I was told. There's a simile there. I looked at the rows of tilled up soil splayed out like open wounds, comparing what that earth looks like tilled out into an open wound. My already blistered hands and scraped knees rebelled as the dust took over me like a swarm of bees. Ooh, another simile. I went to the far end of the yard so I could grumble to myself without being heard. "The earth, it holds back secrets it is not willing to part with," I mimicked. What a bunch of hooey. I said it under my breath, tossing a dirt clod over my shoulder against the locked-up garden shed. I studied the little outpost, and feeling the diviner's eyes on me, I came to the only reasonable conclusion. Miss Sadie was holding back a few secrets of her own. As the afternoon wore on, I began feeling like the miners from years ago, covered in grime, tasting the dirt in my mouth. I imagined it to be the soot of the mines. Had their families recognized them when they'd emerged from their desolate work? Would anyone recognize me? Would anyone care? I was enjoying my pitiful thoughts. What if I died right there in that dirt? Would anyone notice? "Death is like an explosion," Miss Sadie said, her accent thick like the humid air that hovered around me. "It makes people take notice of things they might have overlooked." I sat back on my haunches, enjoying that my sorrowful thoughts had not only had been not only interpreted, but seemingly overheard. What was Miss Sadie talking about this time? Whose death? This is the way with the widow Kane. Her death causes people to notice things they have overlooked, she continued. My mind had to work backwards. I recalled the name, the abandoned mine shaft where Ned and Jinx had made their fireworks. It had been on the widow Kane's property near the mine. I tried to shut out the story I knew was coming, but Miss Sadie's words pulled at me. It was like being drawn out of the dark mine, only to emerge squinting into the bright light of day. I preferred to stay lost in the darkness of my dismal thoughts. Unbidden, Miss Sadie went on. Mr. Devlin and his mine people have a sudden interest in that little stretch of land near the edge of the woods that before had only been a pleasant spring and a shady place to sit between Manifest and the mine. I could hear it coming like a freight train, and there was no stopping it. I kept my back to her. What do you think that says about her impression of Miss Sadie? It's like when a story's coming on, trying to stop Miss Sadie from telling that story would be like trying to stop a freight train. So Miss Sadie was a force to be reckoned with, especially when she had a story to tell. Lester Burton. He goes back and forth across that stretch of land. He observes it from this way and that. They even call a new geologist to make a report. The townspeople keep a watchful eye, but ask questions only among themselves. Keep talking, I'm not listening. Do you think she really is listening? I know I would be. Before long, Mr. Devlin himself pays a visit to the public land office to inquire about purchasing the land that now that the widow Kane is dead. This is a mistake. Mrs. Larkin's neighbor works in that office. Mr. Devlin he barely leaves his seat before half the town knows that he wants to buy the land. I turned around, but only because I was at the end of one row and starting on another. He says he will use it as a picnic area for his miners to eat their lunch. It does not take a diviner to see that this is a lie. He barely gives the men time to eat, and they do that underground. Oh, I can't imagine trying to eat in a dusty, grimy, soot-filled mine. It's bad enough to be down there. I certainly don't want all that on my food I'm trying to eat. This book has given me a new appreciation for my grandfather that I never met, because he worked in a mine, and it's kind of one thing to just know that, like a statement, like, yeah, Grandpa worked in a mine. Oh, well, that must have been scary. But when you read about what life was like and having to go underground and how they were treated and things like that, it really makes you appreciate the conditions he must have had to work under. Too much time would be wasted coming up and going down to give them a few minutes of fresh air for lunch. The news spreads and Hadley Gillen calls a meeting. They piece together what I could have told them all along. She let off for a long pause, and I swear the words came without my willing them to. What? What could you tell them? Oh, so she is interested. Miss Sadie almost smiled. Where the grass grows thick and animals refuse to burrow, there is ore below. I remembered something from an early part of Miss Sadie's story. Jinx had seen Mr. Devlin arguing with the mine geologist. It had been something about the coal vein taking a turn and going the wrong direction. Was that what she was talking about? Miss Sadie picked up where my thoughts left off.
The vein, it zigs where it should have zagged and runs right underneath the patch of ground between Devlin's mine and the town of Manifest. The widow Kane's property. Unfortunately, after her death, it was only patch of ground that neither side could claim as their own. Now, when is this occurring?
1936. Well, this is occurring
No,
in
this time the story that she's digging all this dirt and it's hard as a rock.
36.
What in 36?
It
July?
was June 17th, the day after my birthday.
Oh, it's not that fancy. Let me tell you about 1936, boys and girls. 1936 was one of the driest years ever on record in Tulsa and through this whole area, which was known at the time as the Dust Bowl. 1936 was the height of the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression. We had more record highs during 1936 than any other year in Tulsa's weather history, and even some record lows because the weather was so dry. It gives credence to both very hot and very cold weather. So you're hearing this story about her digging in the dirt and it's all rock hard and dusty. Well, that's the way it was. It was hot. It was dry. She was hot. There wasn't much rain. We had the least amount of rain on compared to average in July of 1936 here in Tulsa. There you have it. How do we close this out?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking about me trying to dig weeds out of the garden last weekend. And we've had a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still hard to dig all those weeds out. I can't imagine having to dig them out in dry dirt.
Yeah, that would be no fun at all.
No.
Hard as a rock.
Okay, the questions through page 181 will be posted on the portal. Now, please notice this video, the previous video, and the questions are not due until Friday, but Harper, public service announcement, don't wait till Friday. Don't wait till Friday. You should probably work on these Tuesday or at the very latest Thursday to stay on track. So we'll post another video with the next chapter and we'll see you soon. Say bye-bye.